Another fabulous day of beautiful weather, high of about 73 and in the 50s as we woke up this morning. So just gorgeous weather, good sleeping weather, beautiful weather outside, sunny and nice. We're thankful for it, such beautiful weather. Today, as we go through the chronological Gospels, we've finished up John chapter 5, where it was recorded only in John chapter 5. And today we look at another event in AD 28. AD 27, Jesus' first year in the public ministry. There were 12 events we looked at, and now we look at 55 events in AD 28. And we come to the plucking of the grain. And you remember Jesus and his disciples had walked through some grain fields. His disciples were very hungry, and so they took some grain heads off of the grain and were eating them. Well, if you look at Matthew, it tells us all of that. But if you look at Luke in chapter 6, you'll find that they were rubbing the grain heads to get the grain free from the chaff. And those legalistic Pharisees that were watching said they were working on the Sabbath because it was the Sabbath when they were walking through the grain fields. And of course, that's based on Deuteronomy 5:14, to not work on the Sabbath, but had been embellished greatly by the legalist of the Jewish faith, and it was certainly not what God intended. Nevertheless, that was what they were accusing his disciples, and Jesus quickly retaliated with, "Have you not read about David and how when he and his men were hungry, went into the temple and ate sacred bread that was set aside in the temple for religious principles and rites." And then he fully defines that in both of the other Gospels, but he also goes back and talks about the fact that God desires compassion and not sacrifice. And he makes two very important statements. One is found in all three Gospel accounts. We're looking at Matthew 12, Mark 2, and Luke 6. The most brief account of this event is found in Luke. And in Mark, we find a really profound statement not found in the other two, which is the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Let me say that again for you. It's really important. Jesus quickly defended his disciples by saying the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. Now, all three of the Gospels say the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. So that's a very strong point as well, that the Sabbath was the Lord's day, and he was the Lord, and the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. And if he allows his disciples to do that, then it's perfectly all right. It's a good thing that we have policemen, firemen, and all types of other workers that are willing to work on the Sabbath, so that we can have safety and protection, and that our needs, our necessities are met. We probably wouldn't have water on the Sabbath if it wasn't for workers that work in the water plants. We wouldn't have safety if it wasn't for the firemen and the policemen that work on the Sabbath. And so the key here is not legalism. The key is practicality as well as keeping it holy. And that's why he emphasizes that the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath, and that he is the Lord of the Sabbath. And as long as you're honoring him, he's not going to have a problem with what work you may have to do. And so we find some really fine teaching on the meaning of the Sabbath and keeping it holy, and recognizing that Jesus is Lord of all, and that God desires our compassion, not our sacrifice. His disciples were hungry. It was necessary they eat, just as David's men, when they entered the temple, were hungry and needed to eat. And God is an understanding God and a patient God and and a God who's not a legalist, but a God who says the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So don't get too legalistic about Sundays. At the same time, don't use this teaching as an excuse to fish on the Sabbath or to stay open with your businesses just to make an extra dollar. We know that God has certainly honored Chick-fil-A for their closing on Sunday. And I can remember a time when the original founder of Publix refused to open his stores on Sunday, and Publix did quite well regardless of the fact that they weren't open on Sunday. And you wonder whether God will continue to allow Publix to be as successful as they are, having shifted from the convictions of the founder of the store. But nevertheless, we know that the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. And that's my thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day, a good weekend. Be sure to attend church on Sunday. And that's my thought. God bless.